We need a catchphrase.
Okay, what is it?
I don't know. It's just an open question that we need a catchphrase.
I don't think you should just pose open questions anymore.
I think that's how you generate conversations with an open question. If I ask a yes or no question, it's a one-word answer. So Keegan, would say good day, yes or no?
I don't know. What is a day?
Okay.
How do you like that open question? Huh?
See? All right. What is a day? Did God constitute a day to be 24 hours? Is that man-made?
I don't know. What is God?
Hey, speaking of which, who uses God in a lot of comics, we have a great guest for you today.
We do, but maybe we should introduce our show.
Well, no, it's not important.
I guess you're not ready for this at all, are you?
Not at all. All right. Anyways, who am I? I am Eric Schwartz. And who am I with?
Keegan Shiner.
And as you can tell by our very poor opening, we are two dumb
late to the podcast. No?
Dumb?
I'm sorry. You were saying the title and I was saying what you were. You were late to the podcast.
Yeah. I was late to the podcast.
You were late to the Dumb Comic Creators podcast.
Because of my own dumb, stupid self.
Yeah. And your computer crashed.
Twice.
Wow. That's impressive.
Yeah.
Are you saying at any time we might lose you?
Well, yeah, but I think my computer should be set now. What happened was, first time it crashed because...
I don't care. Let's introduce the guest.
Okay.
Nobody cares about your computer.
Nobody cares, Moby. Nobody. All right. Special guest today with some great comics. Russell Nohelty. Did I say your last name correct?
Did. It's about a 50-50 shot of people.
Oh.
I want to pronounce the Helty, you know? But
well,
it's just Nohelty.
It is, but like because most of my work deals with hell and demonology, like it's fun that like my middle the middle part of my name, which is mostly silent, is like this.
Phonetically, it's Nohelty.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for letting us read some of your great stuff. We read Ichabod 1, 2, and also
Katrina Hates the Dead.
Katrina Hates the Dead. All great comics.
But that's not to say that you don't have other books and comics, which is to say you have tons of books and comics.
Yes.
And you're a USA Today bestseller.
I am. Yeah, I'm in the process of writing my 20th novel. I've released 8 this year. I'm planning to release 8 next year. This book that I'm writing right now is the 7th book in the Godsverse Chronicles, which are part of Katrina Hates the Dead. One of my other graphic novels, Pixie Dust, and then 2 additional novels. So there's a total of 6 right now, and then there's 4 of the books have 3 stories in it, so it's 12, 13, 14. There's going to be 14. There's 14 stories right now, and there will be 17 by the time, hopefully, January rolls around.
So you have very little free time. That's what I'm hearing.
Well, you know, I used to do a lot, and this year, if it's taught me nothing, it's to follow the things that I am compulsed to do. So I have my own podcast called The Complete Creative, and my own whole website called The Complete Creative. And I am compulsed to continue to write and do stuff for that. So I'm doing some stuff for that. And then I'm compulsed to write. And I was only supposed to write 4 books this year because I had a whole convention schedule. But without a convention schedule conventions are really hard because you are always, if you're running the schedule like I do, which is 20 to 30 shows a year, you're always either getting ready for a show, at a show, coming down from a show, or like recovering from a show. So there's not a lot of time to like look inward about what you actually want to do. You just are kind of on this treadmill, and it's a great treadmill because like you're at a show, people are buying your books, like these weird things that come out of your head. I mean, you guys read these books, like they're really weird. And people are just like, I really love these books. And I'm like, really? They're just so weird. And that's wonderful.
Even you can't believe it.
I almost can't because like, I mean, I read a lot of books. I read a lot of stuff and like, I understand like slice of life or like Friends or like thrillers or things like these things happen in the world. And I understand how you can like ground and resonate with them. But it always fascinates me, sci-fi and fantasy and horror, that like people like are like, I really love this random thing that you literally just made up out of your head and plopped down on a page. It's wonderful. But when the show stopped, I had to kind of have a come to Jesus moment and be like, wow, I've been doing all of this stuff since 2014, like literally the end of 2014. I started doing Kickstarter beginning of 2015. I started running the show circuit, and I kind of have never stopped since then. And this was the first time I was like sitting there going, what do I do now? And I have depression and anxiety, and like I'm like a hot mess in here, like most creators are. But the thing that like flushes that out is the writing, and I just kept coming back to it over and over and over again. And my wife told me, she said something, I'm going to paraphrase it horribly, but she's like, well, like you do all this other garbage that's not writing, and like then you just pour all of this money back into writing. Like, what if you just didn't do this other garbage stuff that you like don't want to do? And instead of having to like waste another 20 hours doing this stuff, you just like use that to write and then release more books and then make more money on the books. And yes, it won't be probably as much money as you can make doing consulting or any of those other things.
Is that what you were up to? You were doing like business, more of a business?
Yeah, so I do. Well, I have my company, The Complete Creative, does marketing services for authors, and it does courses, and it does a whole lot of other stuff. And it's good money, but like it ain't writing, and it like pays the bills, but like it ain't writing, and like it ain't coming up with stories, and it's not creating. And so every year I've kind of tried to put more of the creative hat on and less of the editor, publisher, like business consultant hat on. And it's been wonderful, but the thing that's been most wonderful is just like I have all of these books now, and I'm like, wow, I have so many things that I've done in my career, and it's lovely to like look back at it now, especially now that I've done like 3 launches this year and have put out 9 new books. It's just nice to be able to sit back and go, oh my God, like look at all this stuff that I've done. And I just made this new graphic today, which has all of my current books that are out. Yeah. And just seeing, it's 24 books almost, I'm like, I can't believe that I made all that stuff, frankly.
I was going to try and list them, but it would have taken a long time. So
we would have spent this last hour just reading your books and then saying, and then another one,
So, I had a question. You said 6 years ago you started your first Kickstarter?
I did.
And which book was that?
It was Ichabod Jones, Volume 1 was the first book. So it was the soft cover edition. I started making it in 2010, released it through Viper Comics. Not happy with how it was released in 2011 and 12. And then like I got all the rights back. Viper was the one thing they did right was they gave the rights back without like me having to do anything. They just like gave it back. And I said, I did it. Then that's when I started doing it myself.
You started in 2010 then, making comics?
I did. I moved to LA to do movies and TV, and it didn't work out very well. And my manager introduced me to comics in 2010, and I hadn't read them maybe a decade. I read them in the 90s, and then I kind of got like all of these, it got 90s. All of them were like bigger and better and bolder and like sexier and all of these things. And I just kind of fell out of love with them. But like he handed me this stack of just like all these independent comics.
Indie comics, yeah.
Yeah, it was nothing from like the big 2. It was no superhero stuff. It was just like crazy random things. And I just I was like, I have to do this. I have to do like how much does this cost to do? Like, what is this? Because I was used to making movies, and I made a very average movie. It was very competently done. It became a web series called Connections, which you can watch on YouTube. But like that cost me like $50,000.
Yeah.
30, 50 grand. I forget the exact number. I think it was maybe like 35 grand to make that movie. Like very small, low budget mumblecore movie.
Right.
And they were like, oh, 10 grand maybe to make like this vol. And I was like, what? Blowing my mind, because I'm like, I could make this and this looks as good as a Marvel book. Like to my at least untrained eye, I can make something that's as good as the best on the market, and like it would cost me a third, and it can be this awesome, cool, like innovative art form. And I just kind of like fell in love with it then, and like dove in with both feet.
So you started with Ichabod, and it took a year for it to get published. Is that correct?
So what happened was I made a book called The Wannabes. It's an 8-page preview, and I took it to Comic-Con in 2010. It was about fake superheroes that get real superpowers. YA, like adorable, like I still love that book. In fact, it's the name of my company, Wannabe Press. Is the
that's right.
The logo is the Wannabes logo, actually.
Oh, cool.
But I took it to Comic-Con, and this was back before like there was indie superheroes. Like really, I think maybe Invincible had just started a year before, but there weren't really like indie superhero things.
It's right around the time The Boys started too, right?
Right, somewhere, yeah. So like there were a couple things, but again, like that was Robert Kirkman. That was like Garth. That was not like random Russell Nohelty human who like was making this. And so and everyone said like, why would I buy this from you? Why would I put this out if like Marvel and DC are putting it out? And I was devastated. And so I came back and I was like, well, if they're gonna reject me, like I might as well give them a reason. Like let's just make the craziest thing that like I really, really love. And Ichabod became this sort of like, I made Ichabod. I made 5 pages of a book called Paradise, and I just started shopping them around. And Ichabod was this really, really, really weird book that nobody really wanted to draw. I mean, back then I was using digital webbing and DeviantArt, and like 6 people applied to do Ichabod. Like 6. I mean, I don't know if you've tried to find an artist to do a book, but like
that's all we do here.
You get like 1,000 submissions for anything. Like you could just be like, yeah. And so it was crazy for me to get like 6 submissions, and in that, like the 4th page of this came to me. It was like Renzo sent me the 4th page of this book, and it was like exactly as I envisioned it.
This one.
That page.
Yeah.
And the artwork for this is fantastic. And you should, so every once in a while, especially in these, you'll get artwork that clashes with the story. This one, they complement each other very, very well, which is, I guess, very, very fortunate. This is your first, like, not going to say like Wannabes wasn't your first real comic, but your first major comic endeavor.
Yeah, I come from movies and TV, and I wanted to be a director. And in directing, they say once you cast, your job's 80% done. And so I knew what I wanted. What I wanted was for it to feel like you were in Ichabod's head. And I also knew from reading a lot of comics and watching anime and cartoons that like the more cartoonish you make something, the more violence and like craziness people will accept from it without getting grossed out.
That's why, so that's why the character, they're not super realistic, but they're on the verge of being realistic, which I really liked. And well, I really wanted these big blue eyes. Like that's the thing that I think connected me with him, because he's a mental patient,
right, and he's killed a bunch of people, and like I had to connect you. I still had to connect with him. Like he's still the hero. There are comics that have come out about like anti-heroes who like you're really not supposed to connect with, like they're just like bad guys, but I really needed you to love Ichabod. Like it was essential that the design of Ichabod made you fall in love with him, even though he did all of these horrible things, and you find out these horrible things pretty close in the beginning of the book.
And he seems kind of innocent. That's what those big guys say to me.
Like a lot of his thing is like he's not a hero by choice, if you even call him a hero. He's a hero because something was forced upon him.
Yeah, and he's still, the thing I love about Ichabod, and the thing I loved exploring in the second volume, is that, you know, if the apocalypse ends, he goes back to a world where he is the villain. And like the tragedy of Ichabod is that this is the only place where like the world makes sense to him. Like there's nothing that makes sense to him in the world. Like in every place else, he's been objectively cast out of society. And the thing that like he could do is just stay in this apocalypse. And yet, despite all that, he still like wants to do the right thing, even though by the end of it, by the end of it, if it all goes as planned, he goes back to being this incarcerated enemy of humanity.
It's tragic. That's classic tragedy right there.
He's like the Jonah of the world, like the comic book world, in the sense that he's stuck in a position he doesn't want to go in. He'd rather retreat, and people hate him because they blame him for something that's not necessarily his fault, but he's part of it. It's how I saw him personally.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to make this sort of like screwed up chosen one narrative where like a friend of mine talks about like every story is a superhero story, and like whether you're using lawyer powers or dentist powers or doctor powers or comic powers, like everyone's got like a power set, and Ichabod's power set is like he understands viscera. He's like comfortable with viscera. He's comfortable with like the horrors of the world, and like that's what makes him this like almost superhuman in this particular world. But it is what has also alienated him from everyone else. And I wrote this in a very dark time in my life, as you can imagine, from like I was 26, 25, 26. I just moved to LA. Nothing was working. I just had my shot. Like the shot was like, I get
time.
Yeah. I just gone and did wannabes. And like wannabes was the shot. I saved up the money. I wasn't like really working at the time because no one was hiring. This is like at the height of the Great Recession, which I guess is just going to be called the recession now based on where we are now. But and I went down to Comic-Con. You know, I convinced my wife to like do this 8 pages of comics and like that it was gonna lead to good stuff. And I came back and like, not only was it rejected, but it was like roundly to my face rejected, as if like I was like I was like insane. And so this is like I felt cast off from society, like the society I wanted to be part of. I felt like I had been judged to be like that I didn't belong and didn't fit in. And like, I think that a lot of that got funneled into Ichabod in this world where like, the question that I'm asking really is, can somebody who is cast off from society, who society has said is invalid, that can a person like that become a hero?
It's great. It's a great book. It's like a twisted Inception type of it really read really well, and it's funny and has like all the things that you kind of want from a story, including twists. You know, like you have a lot of good twists.
Oh, thank you. It's funny because those twists were put in there because I didn't know how to write comics. Like the reason why I don't know why more writers don't do this, but like they don't play into like their weaknesses and their strengths. So like I knew how to write movies, but like I had no idea how to write comics, and I'd never written anything this long before. So I actually came up with the idea of like, maybe he's in his head, maybe he's in the apocalypse, or maybe he's like killing people as a way to like, if I ever felt stuck, I could just switch and be like, okay, now we're going to explore this part. And it became this like the thing that people love about Ichabod so much is that concept that I came up with as a way to like
give yourself an out.
And mask just the ineffectiveness of like, hey, you know, if anyone doesn't understand what's happening here, or like they question me, I can just say, well, like, it's supposed to feel like it's in his head. So like, yeah, stuff doesn't make sense. And like, it became this like crutch I could lead on to, I think, also move the story in a way that, that like was quite a bit different than other things that were out there at the time.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask, because I transitioned from screenwriting to comic book writing too. Sort of. I mean, I converted one of my screenplays to a comic book, which is a little different than what you did. What is that transition? What was that transition like for you from writing for TV to writing to comic books?
It was the best transition I've ever made in writing anything. The thing that works, that my brain works on structure. And I think that creativity comes from structure, and comics are like pure structure. They are X amount of pages. They are X amount of panels per page. And once you set the tone of like, this is going to be 4 issues per volume, that is what you have to deliver every time. You don't want to have a book that's like 6 issues one time and 4 the next and 6 the next and 7 the next. You want to have that sort of consistent arc and that consistency that's going to carry through to each chapter. I even was like, okay, there's going to be 2 splash pages every issue. Yeah. There's going to be this many transitions away, because I wanted people to know what they were getting. And so, and the great thing about comics is where it starts, where it ends. If you know where you can like literally just put page 1, page 20 and work inward. Which was a really nice change of pace from how I usually write linearly. And comics is the only medium that I can say, I know where it starts, I know where this issue ends, and I have to make them meet in the middle, and I could just make the craziest thing happen, knowing exactly what was going to take place in each issue.
Oh, that's cool. What was it like working with an artist, a comic book artist, for the first time?
All right, so I love Renzo. We've worked together for a long time.
Uh-oh.
Renzo was not the most communicative human when we first started working together, to the point that after we finished the first volume, I vowed to never work with him again.
Oh, wow.
Because he would go away for many months, and he would, I would email him. I found out that I was emailing, eventually I found out I was emailing like the wrong email address. Like I was emailing his like one he doesn't check. Plus there were a lot of brownouts around while we were doing this in Argentina. But he delivered a bunch of stuff. So like, it was very frustrating, but then he would come back like 3 months later with like an entire issue that's just done. And I was like, I'd never seen it. I'd never seen pencil, or maybe I'd seen pencils, but like I'd never seen anything else. And suddenly, like, there were literally 6 month gaps where like I didn't see anything from him, and then I would get like an issue or an issue and a half, or like, and it would be flawless, and it was very frustrating. Again, this is a decade ago, so both of us have grown as creators, and like he's wonderful now. He responds in like less than a day. He's so eager. He also asked. For the last 8 years, I guess, 7 years, whenever we started, 2012 to now, basically once a year, he would email me or message me on Facebook asking me if we were going to do Ichabod again.
Oh, cool.
And so it's one thing to do a book, like to have a book, to like have a creator on a book or have someone draw a book for you and then they go away. That's what usually happens. Like, they're hired guns on a book and then like they do their own thing. So to have somebody keep coming back and having had responded to it so much over the years, and honestly, like I didn't know Renzo's work at the time, but like it's the exact Renzo book. Like his book, like Worm Boy, the Aneurysm one, like they're all like funny punk rock, super gory, like hyper action adventure books. Yeah. Of course, like in 2010, it was a lot harder to get books in Argentina, like, or even know that Renzo was. And all I knew was he was helping. He had drawn 27 for Charles Soule, and Charles Soule has now done Death of Wolverine and Han Solo and just a ton of stuff for Marvel. But back then, it was, I think, his second book. He'd done one for SLG, and then he did this one, and it was so good. Like the art was so weird, and like it was avant-garde, but also it felt like a comic, but it also felt like something totally different. And the washes that Renzo uses was like so interesting.
Yeah.
And so much comes out of in the coloring process for him. His pencils are very I don't want to say pedestrian because they're not. They're very stark. They're almost like sketches, even in the pencil stage.
I know what you mean, where it's not very detailed.
Yeah, I had another book. My artist for Katrina Hates the Dead would literally give Marvel level pencils, and I was like, I could just print these. But for Renzo, almost like 80 or 90% of everything was brought out in the colors. And so I literally had to go and like just what it did that first volume was it made me trust him. After we got through like the first payment, because I now also don't pay the same that I used to before. How I used to pay is like I would send a third at the beginning, a third in the middle, and a third at the end, which meant like I sent him thousands of dollars to Argentina, never meeting this person, talking with them, and like then disappear for months. And you're just like, you hear stories of other creators and such. And it wasn't until we went through this rigmarole like twice that I was like, okay, he's going to deliver. Unless he dies, he's going to deliver the stuff. And so I delivered, like, I guess.
You never know.
You never know. But like I had at least two, like I had seen him deliver the pages and I knew what it was. So it made me really trust his process, just not like the mechanics of that process. And so when we went back to the second volume, and we'd been friends for years on Facebook, and we talked so much about all sorts of stuff that like we had like a friendship now that was not just like the collaborator to collaborators. And so it made me really trust this second volume, and now the third volume that we're working on, that like like I can just be like, he's gonna get it, right? Like he's gonna understand this. Like I will just write Ichabod, period, and then whatever the dialogue is.
Yeah.
And he gets it every time. He gets it either exactly what I'm looking for or even better. I think there's only been 2 or 3 panels since we started working together again that I've been like, I don't really like that. And most of the time it's been like, so this looks like nothing. Renzo, like this looks like nothing. Like I'm giving you a note here because I know what you're going for, but I want to make sure that if this nothing doesn't look good at the end, then I can at least reference that it was nothing. And and you will not be like, well, why is this coming about me at once? So there was one panel in particular, an issue a couple of issues ago, and it was just feet. And it was like 3 characters, and there was 4 feet total for 3 characters. And I was like, Renzo, like I have no idea whose feet these are. And he sends me these, like, the pencils are like they look like the Thing, but like they're very
they're sketches, very, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sort of like artist
they're
sketch.
very sparse. They're very sparsely done. So I was like, as long as there are 3 different, as long as I can tell there are 3 different people's feet in this, like this looks great, but I have no idea if like this is going to work. I'm just trusting you. And that's one of the things that I think I learned most about comics. And the same thing with anthologies and every comic I've done is my job as a writer is to hire an artist or work with an artist who I can lean into the skid with, who like I know their strengths, I know their weaknesses, and I can move to what they love and really get them invested. My job is to like get them invested. And if I can't get them invested to do the work that they need to do, then that's a me problem. That's on me. I need to to write something that is more in line with them, that like lights them up. And it's really that teamwork of like, Pixie Dust is a great example. So I have this book, Pixie Dust. It's about pixie monster hunter who's betrayed, murdered, sells her soul to the queen of the underworld that comes back from the dead to seek revenge on the king that killed her. And it's drawn by my friend Nick Torres, who loves epic fantasy and loves big bombastic things. But I had I'd hired several artists before this, and none of them worked.
How did you hire them? Did you have like 2-page test, or how many pages?
I'd gotten to the point that I knew the artists pretty much, and I was going to artists who I either knew or like had done books before. So I mostly only work with people I know, but I think I did test pages and concept designs for a couple of, like 2 or 3 other artists. And it was not that their art wasn't good. It's just like they'd never delivered pages. And so I kind of put it away. I had this book for years until I finally connected Nick. He showed me a page, or he showed me something. I know Nick for years. He was one of the first collaborators that I worked with at Wannabe Press. Like he'd done, and then he did a story for our Monsters and Other Scary Shit anthology, and he drew our mascot. So like he's an integral part of Wannabe Press. But I don't remember what happened, but something clicked one day, and suddenly I was like, oh my God, like Nick loves epic fantasy. He loves these big bombastic, like it's totally like action adventure, like, and every page is just this huge over the top moments. And he has this way of being able to take over the top moments and like make them not feel so over the top, or like feel like they make sense. And it's like, he's got this very animated movie style.
The science and the simplicity.
Yeah. And it's just, when we connected it, I was like, oh my God, like, of course, like this is the right artist to draw it. And he did an amazing job. It ended up being a breakout book for me, raised $25,000 on Kickstarter. It became one of our best-selling books. But it really came down to that, like, what is the right artist to do this book? And I have another book that I'm working with an artist named Angela Odling, who does Detached on Tapas, and she's very much more into small moments, like monsters and small moments, and dialogue, and like voice gags, and like her stuff there's not a lot of action in it. So for that script, I had to really pare down the action and play up the sort of comedy of just the 2 people in a scene, like a licorice monster and a tea towel ghost, like just being together and like talking, and that was and then I have another book that I've been working on with my friend Eric Lervold, and he's got a whole different set of things that he does. And my goal is to really take what an artist is great at and what you can tell that they resonate with, and pair that with either my writing style, if I'm writing something with them, or do I have written something for them. And now what I do mostly is I have a list of artists, and I'm like, God, I really want to work with them on this story if I ever write it.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
And I think it's counterintuitive to what most people do. They write the script and they're like, that guy's an artist, I'm just going to hire him.
Right.
And I think that the opposite is, like, I think you should spend like an outmoded amount, way longer than you spend on the script itself, like finding the right artist, because they are the ones that are going to be doing the lion's share of the work to get your vision, to make sure that they're doing the work, to make sure that they've done something before that is like the thing that you want, and that they loved that thing that they did. Because sometimes people are just hired as like a hired gun to like do a thing, and it's fine, but it's not the thing that lights them up. So I always am interested in talking to artists about the thing that lights them up, their favorite genre, their favorite thing to do, their favorite stories that they really want to tell. And most of the work that I'm working on now is with artists, and they came to me with a concept, and I wrote the thing because that was what lit them up inside, and it lit me up inside to do it. And being able to match that art style with an artist is something I lucked into, frankly, on Ichabod, and frankly with Katrina, but it's something that has followed me for my whole career.
And you can kind of control it now that you're more successful, and you have more of a resume too for the artist to take a chance on your story, because it is a lot of time for them. Which brings me to a question: where do you fall on the battle between how much time a writer puts into a comic versus how much time an artist puts into a comic?
I don't think there's a battle. I treat my collaborators as like the best part of the entire experience. That's them and the fans are what I'm doing for. So my job is to do everything in my power to make sure that they do their best work. And having even conversations like this means you are taking the artists away from doing their best work. I need them to believe that I believe in them, usually even more than they believe in themselves. That I will pay them on time, that I love their work, that I want to keep working with them, that there's nothing in the world that I want more than to have this book together with them. And my part and the writer's part of the process is very much like an editor's part of a process. And my job is to keep the deadline and keep the schedule and make sure that the writing is good enough that like they can do their best work, make sure that they're paid on time, make sure that they are happy, make sure that they're, that like we're only having positive conversations. I worry that I had a slightly negative conversation about Renzo in this con. It means I don't, maybe people think that I don't love, but like, I love Renzo. This was like 10 years ago. Like this is like a decade ago.
It's
and
clear
like,
you're still working together and you guys like each other and,
right.
And the comic is very successful.
Right. I mean, 2 to 10 years, like people change a lot in 10 years.
Yeah.
I think that I have a different job. Like my job is to production manage the book. My job is to edit the book. My job is to sell the book. And my job is to have the vision for the book. And regardless of all of the things that happen, like I created that environment. Like I created the environment for Ichabod to exist. Like Renzo would not have made Ichabod without me. Right. Like, because I had the script, I had the idea. I'm the one who found him. He found the thing and he applied and he did the vast lion's share of the work. But like, just like a director, and this is helpful actually, I think, coming from a movies and TV, like as a director, like most of what I do is find people and sit in a chair.
Yeah.
And like make sure all of the other people are doing this amazing work.
And you were already used to collaboration in some ways.
Right. And that the director gets the lion's share of the credit when like the things go well, and they get a lion's share of the blame when things go wrong, just like a quarterback. But like, a quarterback is nothing without a receiver or tight end or all the other people on the team to move the team downfield. And the book is nothing without the writer and the script and the ability for them to get the things done that they need to do to like make the thing be done. I mean, how many times do you talk to artists who like didn't get paid for a book, or like their pay is late, or like they don't really vibe with the creator, or all of that stuff? Like that all falls on the writer. So like there's a lot of emotional labor work that goes into writing and creating a book. Not if you're doing it for the big two, but then the environment, but then the emotional labor is handled by the editor.
Right. And the editor, you're basically, if you were at the big two, you're wearing multiple hats, right? Because you're the editor working with the writer, and you're the editor working with the artist, and you're the editor working with the publisher.
Yeah. And even if you have an editor on your book, like if you're the one paying, like you still are the person who has to hold it all together.
Yeah.
Like the artist is the editor is still a hired gun. The artist is still a hired gun. They can walk. They are not pot committed to your book like you are. Right. So you have to understand that that you might be only working on that book for a week, but like the emotional labor necessary to make the book happen rests squarely on your shoulders. And as much as I love Renzo, after the book is done and he's been paid, like he's not going to shows till like he's at now. It's been really nice because recently we just had the book translated to Spanish for sale in Argentina.
Oh, cool.
And so he did a lot of work in that respect. But for the 5...
Does he go to shows there in Argentina?
As far as I know, yes. I've never
I think they have a really big comic scene there.
Yeah, they have
One of the
a
artists
couple
I
of
work
really
with
big
is-
shows.
Yeah, I'm working with an Argentinian.
Yeah, it's funny because
artist as well.
all of my main artists who've ever worked for Wannabe Press on art books are in Argentina, and they live in the same area of Argentina. And I did not
Cool.
intend that. Just
Which area
happened.
is that? They
Is there
probably-
an art school by there, or just random coincidence?
Possibly, it's Rosario in Buenos Aires, I believe. They all like live in that same kind of like, or at some point they all like connected, and now they all kind of know each other from like their work on my books, and also just growing in the. And it's interesting. You have Katrina pulled up because Juan for Gary took a wholly different tact. He got hired to work on Star Wars when Dark Horse owned the license about issue 3 of this book.
Oh, cool.
And so he then worked for, I believe, Avatar before finally he works for Marvel now, and he like does a ton of their books from he's worked for Marvel for years. He's worked on a ton of their stuff. But like, yeah, this was his first book he ever did.
And so he was hired during the production of this book?
He was the artist
right after.
from the beginning, but he was issue 3 of this book. He did he drew a book called Star Wars Son of Dathomir. It was the Darth Maul arc that Dark Horse put out. That was like the only canon thing that when Disney bought them that they brought initially to. But yeah, he was working on Street Fighter concept art, I believe, before this. But this was his first book. And a funny story, if you scroll up a couple of pages to the like page, I think 7 or 6 or up one more. Yeah, that one. The next one down. Page.
This one.
That one. So funny story about working with an Argentinian artist is Juan's English is way better now. But 10 years ago or 9 years ago, when I found him as an artist, like it was not very good. Like I have no Spanish, so like this is not a like condemnation of him.
Any
like
of us can do.
You know, like I could not communicate with a Spanish artist in Spanish at all. So the fact that he could even communicate slightly with me is like a huge.
Yeah.
Like if someone sent me a Spanish script, I would have no idea what to do with it.
It's very impressive.
But I wrote in the first panel on this page, Barry fumbles with a TV. Now, not only is that like colloquial, but like don't even have football down there as far as I know. So like they don't even know what a fumble is. So he drew it initially. You see where it says wait up in the first panel? He drew the thing up in the air like he was throwing it. And I was like, this panel is this page is, I mean, look at this page, like it's so dynamic. And the thing that people always tell me about this book is just how dynamic the art is, and how and how like even the second and third panel, just like it feels like alive.
Yeah.
And I was like blown, easily the best one that like I got. And I got several. This one I had like hundreds of people that got it. The Ichabod, like no one got except the people that got it. But like this one was pretty easy. It was about a girl who gets sick of living during the apocalypse and just sets out to hell to kill the devil.
Yeah.
And the only negative was that he threw the thing in the air, and I realized at that I had to make my scripts much clearer, and it really reminded me that like I can't use colloquial things. This is not a fun contest. Like this is not a contest to be cute. This is a blueprint to make a book, and it has to be.
And like it's just for him to read. You know, it's not for anyone else to look at. Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. You deal a lot with hell, is that and the apocalypse? Is that one of your things that you're really interested in?
I've only dealt with the apocalypse in these 2 books, but I think that I've been obsessed with religion since I was 13. And I like got confirmed, and then my mom's like, my job is done. You want to do whatever you want to do. Funny story about this page is like I did write in the script a Danny DeVito zombie and a
Danny
Keith
DeVito.
zombie.
I just saw it. I just saw it just now. Yeah, I just noticed it.
So the other one is Keith Richards, and then that one's
cool.
Danny DeVito, and that was like every time I see that panel, I'm like, he really does look like Danny DeVito and Keith Richards.
Like, yeah, exactly like them.
Yeah, but I forgot where I was on the other part of this.
I wanted to let's go back to payment, because you mentioned how you used to pay, which is in thirds. What's your current model for payment?
I give artists a $500 advance up front. That hopefully we'll get concept arts at least started and let them know that I'm going to pay them.
Yeah.
And then I pay them every 10 pages.
Okay.
Now I've done 5 pages. Actually, this was paid every 5 pages.
Okay.
And I believe eventually he had to. He drew and colored the first issue, but after that he had to had other duties, so he had to kind of pull back until eventually it was like the pencils. So just the pencils that he was doing by the end. But yeah, he got paid every 5 pages. My preference is to do it every 10, and then I pay the cover when the cover is done. So my books tend to be 20-page issues. So if you did 24 pages, then 12 and 12, plus then the cover, whatever the cover payment is. And that is helpful because I'm like in the hole at the beginning, because like I paid the $500, and like if I only get the concept art, I only get the concept art. But I found that it also helps the artist. Artists aren't necessarily the best at budgeting. And so often when you pay them a lot at one chunk, like they don't do so much work until the money runs out. And then suddenly they do a lot of work very quickly. Yeah. And so it like is a way to, and I've asked artists, I've been like at the end of the year, like I try to burn through some money so that I don't have to pay taxes on it. So I'm like, hey, can I pay you in advance for like the next? And yeah. And they've generally they say I would really prefer not to, because like I have this budgeted for like XY time, and like I like that it comes in like every month or so I mean, I don't know if that's every artist, but it has helped to be like, I think that 10 pages is enough pages to do in a month, so you can get paid once a month. Like it's not a huge commitment. When it's just pencils, I think Juan was getting me back like 5 pages a week. So I was giving him I was paying him once a week for the pages.
Wow, that's a big turn. That's a big turnaround.
That's why he works at Marvel now.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
So do you have any advice for people that are just starting out? Because you've gone through you just started out 10 years ago. So you did just start out a while ago. And so with experience for now, do you have any advice for, I guess, both ends of the spectrum?
So the most interesting part of that, of my career, is that I'm still talking about these books a decade later. Like I'm still talking about Katrina and Ichabod, and I've built a 7-book novel universe, and 2 graphic novels in the Godsverse. I'm gonna be doing at least 3 volumes of Ichabod. Like it's hard to believe that your work will stay with you for a decade.
Yeah.
And because of that, you really need to put the time, effort, and money in up front. Like, you want these books to be, the reason that my books, I think, rose to the top is because I just went to every show. I just went to every show. I did every interview. Like I met every people. For 5 years before I released the book, I did this thing called Comic Book Sunday in LA, where I would go and talk comic books with a bunch of other comic professionals and movie professionals. And I met just so many people doing all of this stuff. But the other thing is, not to toot my own horn, but they're great books. They look great. Not only is the writing great, but the art is so good. I mean, just look at this page of art. It's so vibrant and dynamic. And I mean, even the panel 3, which doesn't look like much, it's just Connie balling up her fist. It feels I feel something looking at that page. And I would never have known before that like if someone told me 10 years later that my work would still be being like looked at and studied and I'd be doing interviews about it, I would tell them to get bent. I would never believe them. But the more that I do it, the more I realize that like, the body of work is really what sells you. Like it's the whole body. Like people might like one story, but when they see a whole body of novels and like, I don't think anyone could say that I'm not a writer. Like I'm not like I don't have a body of work to be considered like at least writer of note that someone should pay attention to. But it's really each of these books and seeing, wow, Ichabod is really good. It's very different than Katrina. Like the Pixie Dust is very different than both of those books, and the novels are very different than those. And being able to do all of those things is really important to think about. Like, but you also have to let it go at the same time, because if you're like, oh my God, a decade later, this book is going to be like, and it will make you crazy. It'll make you like, oh my God, I can never do any page. You know?
Yeah. Because you don't want people to, you're very critical of yourself, right?
Exactly. And you're like, oh, that panel, like, I don't want people seeing that panel or like whatever that thing is. So the other thing is people are very forgiving. Like I've found fans are very forgiving of like me having mistakes, me having like inconsistencies. I think I've rewritten the dialogue for both the first Ichabod and Katrina, and like I've just literally spent time, like, because I don't have access to the lettered files. I just literally taking like one letter and like moving it around to like create other words, or like I did that for years. So it's not like you can't fix things. I have artists that like re-letter their stuff all the time, but you really need to act as if like this is part of the legacy that you're making, because it is. Like if you want to really do this, then it's part of the legacy that you're making. And I did this movie called Connections. Like it's fine, but like I sure as heck wish
you
that
could
like
go back.
it wasn't part of the canon of like the things that people think of me for. And I've only recently been able to even talk about it because, again, there's nothing wrong with that movie. It is like it is 3.5 stars. Like it is a very median thing. There's nothing but, and like I'm proud that at least like I hired good actors and we hired a team, and like we really did everything we could on our minuscule budget to like make it work. And I think that like no one will look at that and be like, oh my God, look at that guy. Because this is the thing. Someone is going to find that book that you're not proud of. No matter what you do, they're going to find it and they're going to look at it and they're going to be like, that guy? And you're like, dude, I write for Marvel now. And they're like, but you made this thing? And you're like, I did like 15 years ago, but like now I'm now I'm freaking J.K. Rowling. And they're like, but look at you. And they're going to make an opinion on you based on the piece that they see. Whatever that piece is.
Now you've scared all our listeners away. Thank you very much.
but one more thing, and then I have hope. And then I have hope, I promise. But like they will put you in a box. So I've been put in the guy who writes hell, the apocalypse box for a decade. I've written 2 books about the apocalypse, and I've written 20 books not about the apocalypse. Now I do love, we were talking about hell before, and like, and I have religious stuff like, and my like crisis of faith all through my books, but like they're not all apocalypse. It just happened that my first 2 books were apocalypse books. And those are the things that people know me for, and those are the things that people like, that I talk about in interviews usually. And so I am the guy who does these things. And this has happened for years. When I started writing novels, even now when I'm starting writing novels, people are like, you're a comics guy, go back to writing comics. Mm-hmm. And like, they're like, this is a fantasy. This is space fantasy. Like, go back to writing about the apocalypse, and they will put you in the box. And the box is good, because if you ever make another thing in the box, then you'll have the audience.
They'll come back.
Yeah.
They'll
Be
come
like,
back
yes,
to
I
the
want
box.
that.
Yeah.
You know, like, and part of that is like, you know, why The Last Man is like Brian K. Vaughan's box. I guess maybe Saga is now, but for a decade it was like Why the Last Man, and Transmetropolitan was Warren Ellis's box, and Preacher was Garth Ennis's box, and like that's the box that they made for themselves, and that's what they'll always be known for. I don't care what Garth Ennis makes; he'll always be known as Preacher. He'll always be known for Preacher. Maybe Brian K. Vaughan's Saga is popular enough, but I will always know him for Why the Last Man. Like, that's the thing that I know him for. And I know he does more than that. And Why the Last Man and Saga are very different. But it's good that people can think of you and think of like an IP that like they can talk about to somebody. That you've gone from just like a cool creator to you should go check out Ichabod, or like you should go check out the God's Verse, or like you should go check out Salvagers, or you should go check out trying to think of a bunch of others. And I know Silver, or any of my other friends, or Headlocked, or you should go check out this book. Because it's hard for someone to go, you should go check out Russell Nohelty. Because it's like, what does that mean? It's like, you should go check out Indianapolis. Like, all right, like, cool. If I'm ever in Indianapolis, I'll go check it out. But if you go, dude, I had the best restaurant, this place. You should drive 50 miles out of your way to like go to this restaurant. Like, that's different. And that's the difference of saying like, you should go check out Russell Nohelty and you should go check out Ichabod Jones Monster Hunter, or like, you got to check out like this book, or you've got to check out that thing. And what I didn't learn early enough was like, once you have a hit, you need to double down on that hit. Like, you need to, don't fight making more of that thing that people love, because that is how you break through. That is how you like, in this world of like noise, if somebody is willing to like word of mouth reference your work or refer people to you, like whatever they're doing, like whatever they're referring, you should like try and consider making more of that thing, especially if it's good enough to break through the noise of the top. The problem is when you first start, you have no idea what a hit is. Like, Ichabod was not a hit when I first started it. It wasn't but like, it was the book that made money. It's like, oh, Ichabod. Then I saw Katrina and I was like, oh my God, like this thing just kills. But then I saw Cthulhu is Hard to Spell, and like 10 times more than Katrina. And it was like, and I was like, oh my God, like this is what a hit. And so like, I didn't even really know what a hit felt like, what it meant to like see someone's eyes dilate and be like, oh my God, I have to have this now, without you don't have to pitch it. It just like slides in somebody's hand. So you don't, part of it is like, you have to do a lot of work. You have to try a lot of things. Because you don't know what the hit's going to be. You don't know, you might know what you want to say, but you don't know what people are willing to hear from you. Yeah. And so, and often, like, if you do a second book that is a bigger hit, it allows your first hit to like become a beloved property. Like, Ichabod would have never been more if Katrina didn't exist, if Pixie Dust didn't exist, if Cthulhu is Hard to Spell didn't exist. Like, there just wouldn't have been enough time for Ichabod to get the velocity that it needs to, like, because it's a weird book. Yeah. And like, I don't think that people, like, I think that a lot of people try it, A, because it's been around for a decade, and B, because like I've done so many other things that they like.
Yeah. So they're trying your other stories and
right. And then they're like, oh my God, what's this weird thing? Like, they almost come to Ichabod last, a lot of them, but then they like fall in love with it. And so having those other pieces, it allows you to, if you really love Ichabod or whatever the thing, to like gain momentum for that. So I don't know if any of those things like are advice, but I do believe, and when I was starting out, I wanted to punch people who said this, but like, you have to think of it like a career. You have to put the money in. People who say they don't have any money for like hiring an editor or like hiring a good artist, I say, I don't know, man. Like, this is your literal career. Like, this is the thing you want to do. And I understand.
What are you getting into it for? Yeah.
Right.
What are you trying for?
Yeah. Well, and they also say like, well, it's easy for you. I'm like, it's not easy for me. Like it's easier for me now because I now have a decade, but like to use the last of my savings to make Ichabod and Katrina, like we're down to like a few $1,000s in our bank. And all I had to show for it was these 2 friggin' books, but I had to show for like all the money that we had spent. Like that wasn't easy. It wasn't easy to like, to convince my wife to trust me. And then for 5 years to like feel like a complete failure every time I tried something. Like I just felt like it was like I'd lied to her, and I'd like, even though she did not feel that way, I felt like I just like wasted all of this money. Like this is money we could have invested. This is money we could have like used to go on vacations. All these things we could have done. That wasn't easy.
Did it work out?
It did. I mean, it worked out now, but it
okay.
Meant,
well, I just want to make sure everyone knows it worked out.
Right, but it meant sacrificing at the beginning. But now, for the literal rest of my life, I have those books.
Yeah,
they are the books that I have, and you make it once. You make these things once, and it feels like a sacrifice. It feels like torture. It feels horrible to watch your bank account go down and nothing coming back to like bump it up. Although Kickstarter now is very helpful for that. Yeah. But if you can do it and just be like, I am going to make the book that I want, and I'm going to make it, I'm going to spend 10 grand on this book, this 4 issues or 5 issues or whatever it is on this book. And I'll do Kickstarter if I have to, and I'll do whatever. And like, it is literally the best work you can do. And you can look at it and objectively be like, I don't know if this is everyone's cup of tea, but at least this art. Like, I don't know if even if you're like, I don't know if the writing is good, but like this friggin' art is amazing. And like, I can put it, it's like, it's hard to be objective about your writing, but like, wow, look at this art. Like the art is so, if you can have that kind of visceral reaction to at least the art, then you will have these books till you die, and your ancestors will have them, and everybody will have, and you'll be able to hopefully set yourself up for this sort of chain of success that comes when you have a few books, because they all kind of build on each other. And I'm nobody because I have one book becomes like, wow, I've got 5 books now. And like, look, I've got a little following, and look, people are coming back to find me at shows, and all of that stuff really matters. But the marketing, I can teach you marketing all day. I have a whole website called The Complete Creative to do it. None of it matters. None of it matters if you don't have a world-class product. Not one piece of it. Nothing matters. You will not break through, and you will do yourself a disservice because people will look at your book and be like, oh, that guy, and write you off for literally ever.
It's that old adage of you have to spend money to make money, basically, right?
Yes, and it's just the nascent stages of this are about like, there's a whole, like, go play, go like have a safe space, go make garbage, like, because you're not good yet, like maybe not you guys specifically, but like when you first start, you're not good.
I'm not good, that's fine.
Like, but you're not good, and you need to like work that muscle, like whether it's writing or art or like
make something shorter, right? Don't go for the full issue. That's kind of the advice that you see a lot.
Do it, or like just don't even worry about anything. Do 1 page, just like, or write it and like burn it afterwards. Whatever it is, because doing the reps is going to make you a better creator, and doing the reps is important when you're ready to sell a thing. People think that all I care about is the selling part of it, but like I very much like we need the making part, because the making part is where you make money. It's been very hard for years. I've been like, okay, so from 9 to 2 is my writing time. And it feels like that's a waste of time when I'm writing words on a page. But eventually those words become books that I sell. And without that time, I literally have nothing to sell. And so we need to make the best stuff we possibly can, and we need to turn into our skill level. My first novel was a middle grade fiction. My next one was told on blog posts. My first comic book we talked about had like I literally wrote in a way for me to justify if I screwed up. But all of those things, all of that stuff, like led to this part that I can do now. I'm not going to say seamlessly or without effort, because there's always effort, but certainly with less, it takes me less effort to put together a book now and know what it's going to do than it did 10 years ago. So you really have to get very, very good to have a shot now of like, not of like selling something, because there's always going to be something that likes outsider art, but like to like have a shot in like breaking through to like the level, like it's got to hit a certain quality level. But there are more comics than ever before. There are more comic fans than ever before. The fact that there's 1,000 divisions aimed at like helping kids read comics in Random House and Scholastic and all of these places means that they're going to grow up in the next 5-10 years and they're going to be comic fans and they're going to be looking for new stuff. But really, you just understand that the things that you put out need to be the best quality you can. And I'm not saying spend $500 a page. I'm saying they need to have a vision, because that is what people reply to. Like people respond to like, this person has a vision and this whole thing came together. And again, last thing I'll say about this is I literally I would never have believed you if you told me that Ichabod was going to be a 10-year project and that I'd be going back again and again, that I'd be working with Renzo for a decade.
Yeah.
Like all of that stuff shows that like, if you make something great and like you can find a way to have it resonate with yourself and other people, then you can sell it forever. You could sell it like you have access to it for the rest of your life. And it feels like a big burden to spend now, but it will not feel like a big burden in 10 years. And I've not been doing this that long. I've never written for Marvel. I've never written for DC. I've never written for any company except very, very small companies. And usually they're my friends' anthologies. And I still have been able to make a career for myself, because I never skimped on quality and I made sure I made the books that resonated with me and hopefully resonated with other people. But yeah, all of this stuff happened. All of these books that you're looking through, all novels that I've written over the last like 10 years and books that I've made in the past 10 years. And 10 years feels like a long time, but I promise you, it is not a long time. And when you get to that 10-year mark, what you want is to have 20 books that you're proud of. You're like, wow, I now have like an arsenal. Like I now have equipped myself, past me, equipped present me and future me for battle. And I now can go into battle with 20 books, 20 projects that I'm proud of.
That's great. That's great. Hey, so thank you so much for coming on and telling us about your journey and our creative process and literally everything from the start to the finish. I think you were able to tell us, and it's all good advice.
We also had questions written down that before we even had a chance to ask, you were able to answer.
Oh, yeah, wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate it. And if you guys like Ichabod or want to see more, if you head on over to russellnohelty.com, you can download, I send you a couple of my books for free. The first issue of Katrina Hates the Dead, the first issue of Ichabod Jones Monster Hunter, and a selection of our of stories from our Cthulhu is Hard to Spell anthology series.
Awesome. They're great books, by the way, everyone listening to this. You should definitely do that.
Thank you.
Do you have any, you said you had a Kickstarter coming up.
I do. So I have, assuming that this is airing in sometime in next week.
It'll be on air 8/14.
Cool.
It's today for people listening to it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just throwing that out there.
On September 1st, I have a Kickstarter starting for the second volume of Ichabod Jones Monster Hunter. It is the first new volume. I did a Kickstarter last year for the 5th issue, but I have this coming out, and I am so proud of it. I'm so proud of the work that Renzo and I have done. I'm so excited and scared because Ichabod, a lot of people have thought this book was a horror book. But it really is like a dark fantasy book. So it's got horror elements, but it becomes this big dark fantasy world in the second volume, right, Eric? And And
Yes,
Yeah,
it does.
I mean, I'm
the
going to
tone
throw it
is
out.
different.
I was just thinking of Stephen King's Dark Tower, and it like that where it like sort of crosses between the two,
yeah,
between
I
horror
mean, I
and
think that's
fantasy, and
Yeah. No, it's the tone, like, because even the tone between the first half of the first book versus the second half is different, and then the tone between the second half or the second book is different than the first one, and it's all very, very well done. It's a different, it's a different atmosphere each time. Is how I feel about it.
it connects really well, though. I
Yes.
really liked how it connected.
I
It
appreciate
flows.
that. Well, and yeah, so what I wanted to do was like show you one human's journey, and like as the world opened up, the story has to change, right? Like the first two issues are really him, like in this isolated area, and then it breaks out, and they get to this place, and like you see more of the monsters, and you see more of the people, and then you see like the big world that like expands out. So I'm hoping that people follow the journey and they enjoy Necromonica, who's the first wizard of the apocalypse, who is the image that you're showing on the screen here, and all of the other like big. I did a lot of analysis of the first volume. It was like, what did people like of this? And like, what can I pull and what can I change? And I'm very thank you both for saying that, because it's a very scary time because it's been 10 years since I wrote that first volume, and to see if people connect with this very odd turn in a very odd book. The nice thing is the book's always been odd.
I have to say, it goes in a good direction for people listening. If you've read the first one, or you're gonna read the first one, the second one is worth it. So it goes in a good direction.
Yeah, and it leads to another thing, which is an open-ended thing. So we're excited for the third one.
Yes,
Wow,
and I will
Eric.
tell you, to answer the question that me and Eric talked about before, the second volume ends on Thing, but I'm in the middle of production of volume 3. We finished issue 11 already. And if this book goes well, if the Kickstarter goes well, I've already told Renzo that if it hits a certain number, I am going to greenlight volume 4, which will be the end of this like big arc that I've kind of been 10 years in the making.
Nice. No pressure, listeners.
Just
But
make sure it's fun. Just everyone go get it. It's like, Ichabod only exists because the new Ichabod only exists because fans have told me that they wanted it. We've only done volume 2 and 3 because fans proved they wanted it by buying it last year. And so assuming that they keep buying it, I will keep making it. And so all you got to do is continue to buy it and show me that like you really love it as much as I love it. And I'm very happy to spend all of the money that I make from this campaign on more Ichabod. Very, very, very happy to do it. Nothing would make me happier than being able to wrap up this story and hopefully tell more stories in the future.
Well, thanks for coming on, and we appreciate your time and energy and knowledge, and we hope everyone checks your stuff out.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
If you want to, we can.
No, we don't need to. It's fine.
I don't think we need to redo the intro.
No. All
We
right.
still need a catchphrase.
But yeah. I'll think of one.
But if you want to just leave the intro as is,
Let's
you were
do the
late.
choices.
You did screw up introducing the guest. You were a mess when we started. The good news is our guests did all the talking today, so you had time to wake up, I feel like. We do want to thank Russell Nohelty for coming on the show. He was very informative, very like a good success story, I think, right? Because he kind of just started with no knowledge of comics. He even admitted that he didn't read comics when he first started, and he went from that to writing tons of books here. So I think he's like a good, like following some of that is like good for people to listen to, especially working with artists and different pay models. I found especially interesting.
Just also just kind of like he had a lot of advice that I thought was solid advice, which was pretty much just be. I'll sum it up as only present work that you can be proud to present, because although he says he's proud of Connections, I kind of read that he wasn't as proud of it as his other stuff.
You know, there's a problem with that for me, and to be honest with you, I think my problem with that statement is that you are only as good as you are experienced, and a lot of what he's gained as an individual like artist, as an artist from writing all these books, is experience and knowledge of what makes a comic good and storytelling good, and he's only done that by making stuff. So in some ways, I think that warning of like, make sure you make good stuff is it's very hard to follow, because you can only make good stuff if you have made stuff before that sucks and learn from it, you know. So like failure is the best teacher is really a good idiom. Is idiom the right word?
I think it's the right word.
Yeah,
Whatever.
idiom.
Or else we fail with the incorrect idiom.
What?
So if the idiom's not the correct word, we fail from that and we learn from it.
Yeah, exactly. Which makes it the perfect idiom yet again.
Exactly.
Are you looking at your phone? You're really distracting me.
I'm looking at my drink because I'm thirsty, but I'm trying not to drink too much to annoy you.
Why are you looking at your drink like it's a phone?
Because I want it so badly.
Like
Water.
You're texting somebody, texting the bubbles inside.
Nope.
Oh, you have your phone. All right.
You know I have my phone because I have the right internet connection.
3, 2, 1, hand check. You can't do it because you're drinking a soda right now. See, what our podcast listeners are missing is this great banter that you can only really truly understand if you watch our Zoom video, which is right now, it's completely free. Just go to our Patreon, patreon.com/dumbcomiccreators. All of our episodes are free, so you can just follow along as we talk about comics, and it's a visual medium, so it can be helpful. We try and make this as podcast friendly as we can. That was the original intent, but I think videos are kind of more useful sometimes for talking about the actual process of making comics.
Well, I mean, comics are kind of a visual thing, so usually
I've said that 3 times now, Eric. Thank you.
I'm just okay. Fine. Comics are not a visual thing. You should be able to speak about them and just understand.
How dare you? How dare you just contradict me for no reason?
Well, you're the one that told me I had to contradict you because you said you already 3 times. I was following your directions.
I'm just saying, don't copy me. That's all I'm saying. Oh, you're not going to say anything now. He's writing a sad list.
I'm writing. Oh, wait, no, actually, I'm playing the world's smallest violin.
Oh, I thought you were writing a sad list of things that you're sad about because you're so sad.
I'm sad that I don't have a visual representation.
Okay, so normally after our interview, we will launch into something about making comics.
I'm editing right now.
You're still editing, and I'm in the process of doing colors for Death Maze #2, but I'm not quite ready to show that off. And because our interview was pretty long this week, we're going to skip right to reviews. And because our interview was so long, we're going to do a review of last week's guests' comics, which we're very excited to do because they're awesome. So let's just, why don't we just do Fingerbang #1 by Jer and, oh man, what are their names?
1 second, I got it.
Jer Gordon and Ben Perone. Or Perone. Ben Perone, Ben Perone, and Jer Gordon.
Yep.
They both sound like Green Lantern names.
I actually thought they sounded more like Italian foods.
Italian names?
They're Italian foods.
Italian food. I'm gonna eat a Ben Perone.
I'm gonna eat a Ben Perone.
No, that's cultural appropriation. That's stereotyping.
Hey, I'm 1/16 Italian. It's all right. Or about 1/16 of that is.
Whichever 16th that is.
Mhm.
Okay, so a 16th of what we just said was okay. All right, so Fingerbang number 1. Did you read this comic?
I did read this comic.
I did read this comic too. What did you think?
I thought it was a fantastic comic. I thought it was legitimately one of the funniest comics I've read.
Yeah,
I thought that it looked like it was a comic that I felt like the two of us just talk. It was like I felt like just talking to them. The banter of those two really reflected it. I thought it was really good.
it is. And for this review, I kind of went back and I was reading. It reminds me of really early South Park. And especially hearing the story of South Park and how they had to make everything by hand with construction paper, and they were childhood friends or not childhood friends, but they were college friends, and they kind of had a similar sensibility and just kind of threw it together the best they could.
Mm-hmm.
That's what this comic reminds me of. It's like their humor, their voice. It's very original, and it's completely hilarious.
I also think though too that they're able to insert just good jokes, just random jokes there. Can you scroll back up really quickly?
Yeah.
One of the towers, you scroll up a little bit more, is a penis. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah.
Right next, yep, stuff like that.
Yeah, right here. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So if you're listening to this podcast, Eric, on the first page is a splash page of Terrytown, and it's got a lot of buildings that he's built up, and there's little Indian teepees. There's Donnie's Discount Dildos. There's a statue of somebody with a hat. There's Wasey's, a place called the Igloo Dome. Everything on this page is a bit, basically, right? Something funny.
They're able to throw a lot of things on the wall, see what sticks, and more things stick than you would expect.
So what is the story? Let's go through our traditional review here. The story of Fingerbang number 1.
So Fingerbang number 1 is about a character
Joby Jacobs.
Joey Jacobs, who finds a mysterious bong, and when he smokes it up, a genie who looks like Bono comes out and grants him 3 wishes. And so he wishes for the power to have a finger banging, and his second wish, which is
finger banging is what in this case?
He can fire things out of his fingers. So he
because
fire lasers.
We don't want is our listeners to go Google finger banging.
No.
And so that will give you bad results.
Yeah, it's like finger gun. So it's like finger gun. So instead of just firing bullets, it fires flowers. It fires remote control when he needs it. It fires whoopee cushions. It fires whatever he needs at that time, and it's just he's do a lot of stuff with that.
Yeah, so he can say glug 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 with his and his fingers will shoot beer, for example.
For those that are watching, that's literally what's happening. He creates toast, stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay. So, and then what does he do with these powers?
So he becomes a superhero with these powers.
In the meantime, the Ku Klux Klan takes over the news station, right?
Because they win a lottery of $4.2 billion. So they're able to use that and go from there.
Okay. And then they take hostages, right?
Yes. And so just kind of it's, if you say it simply, it's the basic person gets superpowers, person uses superpowers to rescue person or to rescue people. Fighting ensues, people are happy, blah, 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 blah. Nothing that's special. But, it's just a very well done comic and hits a lot of, well done spots.
So let's talk about the art then.
Okay. So the art clearly, wasn't done. I don't mean this in a bad way. It wasn't done by a professional artist. It was done by like a fan, but it was done that way that reflects the comics so well. So like the
I
fact
actually
that
kind of
this
disagree. I have to disagree with the professional comics.
guy, okay,
Because I don't know if I could draw the same character repeatedly like this.
oh, he's much better than me. So I'm not saying that. I'm saying he's much better than me.
So what do you mean by professional artists?
So if you, let's say for example, if I were to pull out a random Marvel comic or a random DC comic or just a random other comic,
Yeah.
most of them have kind of have a style that's based on comics that like.
I'm gonna challenge that a bit because this is like a good thing to talk about when it comes to art, and people have specific expectations of comic book art that it has to look like Marvel or DC. But so if you went back to like the 80s and there's like Pat Benatar, is that his name? Yeah. Neil Diamond, there's The Who, there's Michael Jackson, there's pop stars like Madonna. Would you say that the rising punk rock scene at the time was not music because it only used 3 chords? Because
let me rephrase it then. The artwork is not the zeitgeist of today's art and comics.
Only because that type of music really changed the music industry at the time.
I'm not gonna say if we come back here 5 years from now, I could be totally eating my words. I could be completely wrong. I say I was wrong, and I'll admit I was wrong at the time. But I'm saying at this time, while we're recording it, the artwork.
No, all I'm arguing is that you didn't say it was professionally art.
I'm saying that it wasn't professionally artists in the way that it's.
But
okay,
you see adult
listeners. I'm not saying it's not good artwork for what it is. I'm saying that it's not comic book art, which is what a specific type of artwork it is. The same
That's
way
exactly what I'm challenging. That's exactly what I'm challenging.
Well, I disagree with what you're saying. That like you're saying that if I drew a picture of a smiley face, I could say it's comic art. I disagree with that because manga art also has its own style and has to stick with that. You have overdrawn faces. You have those giant eyes.
That's like saying that only like daytime cartoons are cartoons, and like things that are on Adult Swim, like that sketchy. I mean, I hate to call it, but like there's punk styles that are not mainstream styles of art. They're very unique. They're original to the author. They can't really be replicated. Even South Park, like who did that before those guys? Not many people.
What I'm saying though is that like usually like if you were to take something like a random thing, I can usually identify what type of medium it is based on like specific characteristics. Like so like if you were to show me a picture, I can say this was a painting, a photograph, or a comic. And I'm saying like usually like those fall into certain alignments, and that's usually how like they're just done. I'm not disagreeing with you. I do think that punk rock was a great thing for the 80s, and I think it was one of the best things that ever happened to the music industry. But it wasn't at the time the zeitgeist. It wasn't like a particular part.
Okay, so that means it's not good?
No, I just said that wasn't what I meant at all. You literally heard what I said and then disagreed.
So why did you say that it wasn't professional?
I said it wasn't professional and that like I wouldn't look at this and think this was a Marvel comic. Is what I mean by that. Well, not that it's not good. By professional, I mean like it wasn't done by somebody.
I thought this comic was very professional. Is my point.
I'm not saying it wasn't like. I'm not saying it wouldn't be a comic that you wouldn't buy at a comic book store. It is that good of a comic. I'm saying it wouldn't be a comic that you would think was done by a major comic. It wasn't done by Marvel. It wasn't done by DC. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay, but so then don't say professional. Don't use the term professional.
It's not. It's not what I meant with saying that it wasn't professional. I'm saying that it wasn't. I would not expect this. Like, if you were to turn this into a cartoon right away, Disney would not be the one that have done it. They would redo it. Which I think would be for the worst, honestly. Like, Disney were to redo this.
Again,
I
that's
think it would
not
take
exactly true, because anytime they did Charlie Brown cartoons with an updated style, it failed miserably. Like,
That's what I'm
and
saying.
Charlie Brown is not like you wouldn't call that professional.
Exactly. No, exactly. That's what I'm saying though too. If they were to Disney were to change the art style of this, I think it would make it worse.
Right. Okay. So all I'm trying to say is this was very professional art, and it's not done in the traditional style.
And that's what I meant to say
books.
more by not
Okay.
done by professional. It's not the traditional art.
But in a way, it's very punk rock. I have to say, it's very punk. It's very alternative, and it would fit. Like, again, it would fit right into an Adult Swim type of program. Yeah. Okay. So beyond whether or not it's professional or not, what about the art?
I say it's like they're able to insert a lot of gags into it and do a lot of detail, a surprisingly large amount of detail with their space. Like, so for example, they're able to show like in the background, they have very detailed backgrounds, which is surprising for a lot of them. Not all of them, but a lot of the comics have good background, have very detailed backgrounds.
It's one thing they don't really care about perspective in this too much, which gives them a lot of leeway to just kind of add detail to the background, because everything can kind of be the same size if they want it to. I mean, there is some perspective, but and there's definitely angles of the scenes that change in like a professional. I'm gonna keep using the word professional today. Okay. In a pleasant way. The angle it's not static. Leon. Yeah, it's a very well done in that way, but I would say that they say comedies in the wide shot. That's what this comic is. It's a lot of wide shots of the scenes, and in doing the wide shot, you can have things in the background that are also funny, and that really works well in the comic medium, where something's happening in the foreground and you can still pay attention to what's happening in the background. Whereas in like a movie or a cartoon, if something is also happening in the background, you're gonna miss it because it's so fast. Yeah.
That's why, for example, like with Airplane, if they have a gag in the forefront, they'll have nothing in the background. So it's happening in the background, nothing will be happening in the forefront, because your eye can only be drawn to one thing for a certain amount of time and do that. So that's why, for example, I hate so going back to movies, Suicide Squad, I hate the introduction of all the characters there, because they put stuff in the forefront and the back front at the same time. So you don't actually get to see any of the details about the person. And they have to reintroduce like every single character 3 times because they do it so poorly.
Whereas in this comic, I'd say this comic takes about 3 times as long to read as there are pages. So in a traditional comic, you might get through that comic 1 minute per page if you're slow. In this comic, it might be 3 minutes per page, because you have to take time to like read every little thing that's happening in the panel and kind of laugh at the different gags. And that was a very pleasant experience. Another thing about the art I want to mention is that it's all done in...
I think I want to mention that was professional. That's what I want to hear.
No. No.
Wait, so you're allowed to say, but I'm not? Thanks,
I'm not
Leon.
allowing you to say anything. So the art is drawn with a marker and colored with colored
pencils.
Colored pencils, crayons, and markers, I think. Which gives it a really, 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 really childish look.
It gives like a very home, like this looks like it was done at someone's home, which again, not necessarily doesn't necessarily mean it's not professionally done, but it's just done differently.
Well, I'm not gonna lie. I didn't know how old our guests last week were gonna be when they signed on, because when I first read it, when I first started reading, I was like, oh man, a kid made this. We're in trouble, right? And but as you read, the writing is so adult that and complex there's some complex stories here, and it has good story structures. So the art is almost a juxtaposition to what the writing is, which is cool.
Yep.
Anything else about the art?
It's one of those comics that if you reread a second time, you'll notice things that you didn't realize at first in the first time in the art.
That's true. Yeah.
So so as you're going saying like it takes more than a minute to read, it's actually one of those books that if you reread it, you're like, oh, I didn't see that there. So for example, not one of the first books, I reread one of the other ones, and he clearly had an erection the entire time, and you don't realize that till like later when they talk about it.
Yeah, and it's one of those. That's one of those things that keep paying off when you buy this comic. I do have one more thing to say about the art. It's cool that there's so much texture on the page because you're reading these when they're zoomed in digitally, or like looking at them close, and you can like see each stroke of the marker.
It looks like it was done by hand, which it was, and not on a computer at all, which also is like I also meant by it, not professionally done. And then like this person
it made it look more more like art and less like computer.
It looks
generated.
more like old school art than current art. Is what I meant by when I said not professionally done. Because if you look at like the original, Green Lantern, for example, that was completely hand drawn and stuff, and you could see like it was much more reminiscent of this than the current Green Lantern is, because the current Green Lantern is all done by computer.
And I almost wonder if we're also so into this comic because of that, because we can see how much work went into this, because it was clearly hand drawn and like each stroke is visible. Like just coloring in this couch must have taken a long time. You can tell that like all the places where he had to color that in. So anyway, that's about all that we should talk about the art, I guess.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the color.
Color was done very, very well. Even though it was done, again, as I said, by markers and colored pencil, I thought that it actually like really had good distinctions, really let every character know where it was, and wasn't done in such a way that I thought it blinded my eyes, but done in such a way that it, again, reminded me of South Park in a good way.
Yeah, there's a lot of negative space, and I think that the colors don't clash too much. Like the artist definitely has a good grasp of color theory and knows when to use, like what colors to use next to each other to make certain things pop as they need to. But what I really liked was how much white on the page there is when it needs to be, because you can overcolor, these things, and it can look really bad. So, what about the lettering?
Lettering was actually my favorite thing. It was all done by hand, and it was written in such a way that each one was important when it needed to be, and each one wasn't when it didn't. So the fact that they did it all by hand, I think, gave it a much more oomph than it would have had if it was done just by typed up.
Yeah, going back to like why this comic is kind of special in that it's hand drawn and hand colored. The handwriting is also very, it is also very part of this to me. And unusual to comics is that it's all done in lowercase, which feels very, again, kind of punk rock, where it's like a big
Not professional.
It's FU to like the comic book industry. But it completely works, and like you end up wondering why you ever preferred uppercase in the first place. But yeah, so I really like that it's handwritten.
Yeah. Now I guess about the je ne sais quoi, the French term.
French term.
The French term.
The French term.
It's a French term, by the way.
What is it for you, Eric?
I just thought it was like, honestly, the gags. Like it was, again, it was Airplane. It was South Park. It was, scary movie. It was scary movie. It was whatchamacallit, the Meet the Spartans. That was actually funny.
So we mentioned this in the interview last week. I think it was like watching an improv show where there's a scene happening with the main character, but everyone in the cast is in the background adding like scene painting,
Yeah.
and everyone has their own unique like way of filling the scene in. And he really did that with all the characters in these panels. Because you have a main character, but then like every background character has something that they're doing and something that they're struggling with in a comedic way, or there's a bit in the background that's funny. But there's not just one bit, there's like 50 bits per panel, So like, for example, in this panel alone, there's like a cubby filled with weapons in the background, and KKK members trying to do yoga and exercising on a stationary bike, and getting their robe caught in the stair climb.
And the fact that like they're all doing like they don't change at all. Like they're all doing their yoga and they're all their like white outfits, stuff like that.
Yeah, and they have hairy legs under these robes. It's just and that's like so many bits, and that's just one panel of this comic, or one. Yeah, it's not even a whole page. It's just one panel. So anyway, yeah, definitely the bits, and definitely the writing of this comic book. Well, it really just goes hand in hand with the art, to be honest.
It goes, yeah. Like these guys said they've been friends since what? They said 6th grade. So, and that shows that like they've really known each other and that they really work well together. So, even though one is heavily the official writer, one's the official artist, I have a feeling that's not 100% true. I have a feeling both put a lot into it.
Well, and they said one of them does stick figures and the other one fills it in. So, and they both kind of write. So I'm sure it's completely collaborative.
Yeah.
And hopefully the fame and fortune never gets the better of their friendship.
Yeah. Hopefully they don't, Yoko Ono this and one dishes out.
Yeah.
So, like, for example, like when I make it big with my comics, you're fucking done.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for using that word on our podcast.
Done?
No.
You?
Dude, I try and make this family friendly. I'm not kidding.
I know. That's my fault. Please edit that out.
But of course, we just had a comic on here called Fingerbang.
About a guy who gets high to use his superpower. So, yeah.
So we're going to say PG-13, parents. PG-13.
Yeah. That's our one swear. We will not have another one.
Eric, this has been an episode.
Yeah, it has been.
It's been a long episode.
I know. It makes one think. Do we want to think about right now? That we need a catchphrase.
We do need a catchphrase. Hey, if you're listening to this and you want to watch it, go to our Patreon, patreon.com/dumbcomiccreators. Watching these episodes is free. They're unlisted on YouTube. You won't find them. You have to go to our Patreon. Just suggesting that you support us on there, but you don't have to. You can just watch these episodes if you want to. But you could just throw $1 or something, and you only pay per comic. Eric signed up this week, right, Eric?
Yeah, it was worth it. I got so many perks.
Did you? Yeah?
Yeah.
What were they?
Well, I got the good, warm feeling that I'm going to helping out the 2 comic creators create comics.
You're one of those 2. It's like it's like taking $1 out of one pocket and putting half $1 into your other pocket.
Yeah, except I took the $1, tore it in half, gave myself one half, and I'm giving you the other half.
And then you took those 2 pieces and you broke off like a third or 20% for Patreon to use too.
Yeah.
Anyway, we completely appreciate your support.
And for all 2 of you who are still listening after this 2 hours, we really appreciate it.
Yeah, and feel free to email us or reach out on Instagram We're open to reviewing or answering questions at any time.
Yeah.
So with that, I have to say, it's been fun. Okay, I'll talk to you later.
All right. Bye.
Bye.